Hey, what's up guys? So in this video, we're going to take a closer look at the reliability of our countermeasures, something that's tough to actually get some good information on. Now, typically when I'm testing and reviewing stuff, I'm focusing more on the performance aspects. Now, when it comes to reliability, in terms of how well kind of stuff lasts over time, I can share my experiences. I hear you guys' feedback, whether it's on the forums or in YouTube comments or on social media. But I wanted to get kind of more like hard data to go along with all of the anecdotal stories that we all have. And to do that, last month I sent out a series of surveys to give us all a better idea as far as which brands tend to be more reliable versus which brands tend to have more issues. And in the survey, I would ask you guys about a bunch of different popular brands. I would ask you if you've had maybe a critical issue, for example, which would be something like a major problem that prevents, say, a radar detector from detecting or alerting to radar properly, or maybe like it's a minor issue, like a small annoyance. Maybe GPS can't always get a good lock, or the firmware update software is difficult to actually get working on my computer, but otherwise the detector itself still does the job. Or is it just like, hey, things are working fine, no issues at all, good experience. And then I also wanted you guys to share a little bit more information of things like, maybe which models of detectors did you own? Or what issues specifically have you experienced? Maybe tell me a little bit more. And then also regarding those issues, like, have you been able to resolve those issues too? And a big thank you to everybody who took the time to answer the questions and respond. There were actually several hundred of you guys who answered the survey, and so we've got some good information available here. And to help me get through all this information, I actually used ChatGPT to help me create some charts based on your guys' experience, and to go through all of the different user feedback and issues and get a sense of like the overall trends of what people have been reporting. And all this data and information I've already posted up on the forum. So like I've got a full thread for just all of the radar detector information. And then there's another thread that's just for the different laser jammers. And then finally, there's going to be another thread over on the Dashcam Talk forums that's focused on, well, all of the Dashcam information. And then finally, I've also exported all of the raw data that people submitted. So if you really want to go into detail about seeing all the different brands and models that people own or the specific issues that they've had, let's say you're a manufacturer and you really want to get into the details regarding user feedback, I've got links to the raw data as well for all three of the different surveys, as well as the things that I posted over on the forums if you want to check that out too. So as always, links down in the video description if you want to go into more detail. In this video, though, I just kind of want to summarize everything. We're going to take a look at how the different brands compare in terms of reliability, and also see what we've learned from the feedback and the survey, particularly some of the biggest takeaways. And starting off, let's begin first with radar detectors. And to get a sense as far as who owns what, of everybody who responded, here's how many people owned a Uniden brand detector. This slice here is going to be for Escort owners. This is going to be Valentine owners, this is going to be Redenso, etc. Outside the chart, ChatGPT actually put the number of people who own the different brands of detectors. I tried to get it to say like the brand name itself or percentages or whatnot, a little tricky to do. So it just gave me kind of the number of people who own them. There were about 350 people total. Some people maybe own multiple copies of certain brands of detectors or even different brands of detectors, right? But here's a sense as far as who owns what. And then diving into the reliability that people are reporting of different brands, as you can see, each brand has 3 different bars, right, with different colors. If we take a look at the key, you can see the red ones here. These are going to be different critical issues that people have reported. The green ones, these are going to be minor issues that people have reported. And then the blue bars are all going to be for people who said, I had no issues with my detectors. Now, if you take a look at just the size here, you can see these popular brands, I guess, right? So your Unidens, Escorts, and Valentines, most people are going to be owning some of these. We also had some Redenso people, some Cobra as well. When we get down here on this chart, there really weren't a ton of people who responded. Most of the people who responded were like Uniden, Escort, Valentine, and some Redenso. Now, taking a closer look at the data itself, I've noticed with Uniden and actually with Valentine, we've got a bunch of people here reporting that they had no issues, and then fewer people who had maybe minor issues or a critical issue. With Escort, it's a little bit more balanced between the three. I know kind of the heights are a little bit wonky here because this is just purely the number of people who actually reported issues, so we could look at this exact same chart maybe a little bit differently. And so now, instead of just purely how many people reported issues, we're looking at kind of the ratio, the percentages of different types of issues. So here, for example, with Uniden, we had 62% of people reporting having no issues, 26% of people reported having minor issues, and 13% of people reporting having critical issues. Now, when we balance it out like this, I think we have a better idea as far as some of the brands, how they compare. So I've noticed, for example, Uniden and Valentine, their charts actually look pretty similar, with almost 2/3 of people actually reporting that they didn't have any issues at all with their detector, which was great to see. And then maybe fewer people who had minor issues or critical issues. With Escort, it was a little bit more balanced. You can see this big blue bar is, well, I guess not quite as big. So that just tells me that more people have been having issues with Escorts compared to Uniden and Valentine. I was surprised to actually see that these two brands were really similar here. Redenso actually did better still. This one was, 76%? So like 3/4 of people with Redensos reported having no issues at all. Now, that said, we did have a smaller sample size here with Redenso, 36 people who responded. Escort and Valentine, these were both really similar at 120, 125 people. With Uniden, that one, again, we had even more people responding. Now, one thing I was really curious was like, okay, we're starting to get into smaller sample sizes. Come on, highlighter. There we go. With Redenso, and I'm like, okay, well, is 36 a big enough sample size here for Redenso for this to be statistically significant? And so to answer that, I brought it up here with ChatGPT, and I got some really good information. So for example, they said there's no definitive rule on what constitutes a large enough sample size. But one thing that they said is that a common rule of thumb is you want a sample size of around 30 at least to be kind of a minimum for the central limit theorem to hold, but basically that's going to allow us to make certain statistical inferences. And so the TLDR is basically the numbers from Redenso might be statistically significant in a very basic sense, but they're still on the small side, and so any conclusions drawn from this data should be treated as tentative. And that's definitely going to be something to keep in mind here as we start going in through these results. We actually got a lot more people responding who owned radar detectors than we did for the laser jammers and dash cams. So I think our best data is actually going to be for the radar detector side, and it's going to start to get not as good once we get into the laser jammer and dash cam sides, just due to the sample sizes that we've got here. But nevertheless, let's go ahead and get back here to the data. So Redenso had the biggest blue bar here with 76% of people saying they had no issues. Whistler actually did pretty well here as well with 69%, but there were only 11 people who responded who owned a Whistler detector, so I wouldn't really put too much stock in this quite yet. Redenso might actually be a little bit better. But then getting into maybe some of the more popular brands, you've got Uniden and Valentine. These two were actually really similar. And then Escort, they had a lower percentage of people, 30% of people who responded who said they had no issues. Now, something speaking of which to note, this isn't necessarily the number of people who responded, I should clarify. Somebody could say that like, hey, I owned a detector and I've had both a critical issue and a minor issue, right? And so for that reason, we might actually see more issues, quote unquote, reported than actually the number of people who own the detectors. But nevertheless, things here should be super similar nonetheless. And then to learn more about the specifics of what you guys have been experiencing for different brands, I took all of your feedback here that you submitted in Google Forms, exported it over to Google Sheets, and then we're just able to copy and paste all this information and send it over to ChatGPT for further analysis. And this was super useful to basically just summarize and categorize all the different issues that you guys have been experiencing. And then I've taken all this information and just shared it directly on the forum. So if you guys want to take a look and see what people have been experiencing for different brands of detectors or jammers or dash cams or whatever, it's all available here. So again, all this stuff, it's not designed to make anybody look good or bad. It's just like, hey, what are common issues that people are seeing? Have these issues been addressed? Have they been maybe fixed with the firmware update, or has customer service been able to help? But basically, like, what are the things maybe you might want to consider looking out for? Again, this isn't going to be a complete representation. It's just based on what people submitted in the survey, but this is going to be a really good resource as well if you just want to see some additional information as far as what people have been experiencing. Next, let's move on and take a look at the different brands of laser jammers. And so taking a closer look as far as who owns what, out of everybody who responded, almost half the pie here was anti-laser owners, ALP. About a quarter of the pie was going to be TMG owners. And then the next biggest ones, we've got the green one here is Escort. This is going to be TPX. This is going to be Laser Interceptor, and then a few others here as well. And then taking a closer look at the rate of different issues that people have been experiencing. Again, we've got most of the data here with ALP because it's literally like half the pie. Here's Escort and here's TMG. As we start going down the list, again, we've got a pretty small group of data. Look at this, just 1, 4. So pretty small sample sets here. K40, literally just one person there. So the best data is going to be up here. It's still not a ton of data, but nevertheless, there are some trends that I've noticed here that do seem to kind of correlate with what I've noticed anecdotally. Now, if we again rebalance this data in the exact same way, where instead of raw numbers, we're just looking at percentages, right? So the three of these here total, they're going to add up to 100%, right? So our red, critical issues, green, minor issues, and blue is going to be our no issues. Again, best data here on this end. This is going to be kind of skewed because we've got so little data. But nevertheless, what I've noticed, starting with ALP, we've got roughly a balance here between the three different types of reports that people could submit. It was actually pretty similar here for escort. TMG does start to change. You notice this blue bar here for no issues does go down quite a bit. This is kind of what I was expecting here with TMG. There's been a number of issues here with the TMG in terms of reliability. TPX, I noticed, was kind of the other way, which was also something I was expecting too. The TPX is a much simpler jammer, doesn't have a lot of the features that TMG has, but reliability-wise, it does seem to be better. Now, I do want to emphasize, though, we're looking at very small groups of data here. There's only 6 people who responded here who've got the TPX, 22 from TMG, only 5 here from escort. It's really ALP that has a reasonably good sample size, 42. So this stuff really is not going to be definitive in any way, but just kind of working with what we have so far, we can take a look at this stuff. Now, heading back to the forums, this is again where I've posted maybe some of the details as far as the issues that people have been experiencing. One of the most common ones that affects most of the brands here is going to be head failures, whether it's ALP, we see it here for escort, TMG, etc. I run ALPs as my primary jammer. I've been running them for a long time. Over the years, I've had 2 heads fail, for example. One thing that I really like about the ALP is it can actually tell you if an issue happens, if cable gets damaged or a head gets disconnected or damaged or whatever happens, like it can give you that error notification. Other brands don't necessarily have that capability at all. Some systems will actually shut down entirely and not let you know if one head is damaged. The whole system goes down. The ALP can still function even if like one of the heads are damaged. But that said, that's not always going to be the case here. And if we take a look at the ALP issues, for example, some people did report that their heads would fail silently, letting them know that the system didn't alert to failure. This can happen depending on which CPU and heads you use, depending on different combinations. I know ALP's made some improvements with like their ALP-TX heads, for example. So it's not perfect, but it is something that they have as a capability and something that's been getting better over time. And so a lot of these specifics and whatnot, again, you can just head on over to the forums and there's details for all sorts of different brands, whether it's GPS failures, Bluetooth modules, like none of this stuff is perfect. But it's nice to see that, like, you know, sometimes maybe manufacturers, like if this happens, do they do a good job of actually addressing these issues? Like some people are reporting that they got them addressed with warranty stuff or even out of warranty sensor replacements. Some of them upgraded their systems to resolve some of these issues to get maybe the head detection capabilities. So again, there's a lot more information that's available here directly on the forums itself. It's where I made it all available for you. And finally, let's take a closer look at the reliability of different dashcam brands. And with dashcams, there's a lot more different brands that are available. And taking a closer look now as far as the people who responded and who owns what, this red slice here, this biggest one, this is going to be VFO. This one here is going to be Blackview. This is going to be our other slice, kind of everything that's not kind of one of these main ones that I pulled people on. We've also got slices here for Garmin. We've got Thinkware, Escort, etc. Now, I would have loved to actually have the names here, but unfortunately the diagram plugin here for ChatGPT just did the number of people. But either way, this is a look as far as who owns what here, what we're going to be taking a look at here in this poll. And now taking a closer look at the reliability as far as kind of what people have reported with different issues for different brands. Here's VFO, most amount of reports like we saw before. Here's Blackview, Thinkware, etc. Now, again, I want to reemphasize the fact that we've got a pretty limited data set. With VFO, we've got 57 data points here. Blackview's 25. Thinkware is only 8. 8. There we go. So you can see these are going to be pretty small numbers. 11 here for Garmin. The other category, it's what, the second or third largest? That was only 22. Yeah, third largest. So it's really not a big data set, but nevertheless, we've got something here. I kind of want to run through what we've seen. Now, if we again rebalance this based on percentages here, so everything's going to add up to roughly 100%. The best, I guess, ideal case here would be FineView. This one had 100% of people report no issues, but again, that's literally with just one respondent, one data point, so it's by no means statistically significant. There's not actually great data here for dashcams, but let's take a look at it anyway. One thing that I've been noticing is VFO is going to be roughly balanced here. Blackview, the no issues column, does drop down here quite a bit. They've got 25 data points on this one. Thinkware, it's only 8 data points, but we do see that this one is a bigger spike here, about 50% of the responses here were no issues, which was good to see. Also, Garmin was pretty similar here with 55%. This is only out of 11 data points, but still good here nonetheless. Now, one thing that I came across while I was doing my research in this area, which helps to give us some additional information besides just what we saw in the poll, there's actually this thing for the IATF, kind of this certification you can go for kind of quality control for different electronics, automotive electronics that you can put in your car. And specifically, one of them that I came across that you guys had shared with me is IATF 16949 2016. And for more information about it, Vugera, they're a South Korean dashcam manufacturer. I had a chance to talk with them at SEMA last year. They seem to be pretty big on this. They talk about how their dashcams fulfill a couple different certifications and standards, including IATF 16949. And then as far as what that one specifically means, if you scroll down, they give a little bit more information. It's basically focused on things like defect prevention, reliability, making sure the components are working well, and also things like continual improvement over time, just so the dashcams can keep getting better. I've also had a chance to confirm with Thinkware. They also confirm that they follow these same guidelines here as well. And then I also saw a post from eStore009. They do the Blue Sky C dash cams, and they mentioned that there are a few big manufacturers that also have the same certification, including companies like Nextbase, 70mi, and Vantrue. I've also checked in with some other companies like VFO. They didn't confirm that they use it. I'm guessing that they don't. I've asked Blackview for information. I'm still waiting to hear back from them. And as I get more information about it, I'll post that on the same Dashcam Talk forum. Now, the exact impact of this certification, I'm not totally sure, but I do like to see that companies are, taking their time to ensure quality control and at least going for some sort of standards. It's easy for people to just put stuff together. And so if we're focused on reliability specifically, I'd like to see companies that are, taking the time to just ensure their products are designed well. And then coming back to what people have been reporting for different brands, again, it's not a huge data set with every single possible thing, but I've posted everything that people have shared over here on the Dashcam Talk forum. So if you want to go and see what people have been reporting for Blackview or Thinkware or Vantrue or any of these brands, it's all available here. And a couple different posts. And I'll link to this just like everything else down in the description for you guys. And so as far as kind of the reliability of these different brands, given what we know from this survey here, in terms of radar detector reliability, one of the best here is actually Rodenso. I'm not fully convinced of this yet. I wouldn't say it's definitive. We had 36 data points here on this one, so it's potentially likely, but not fully set here. But either way, it's looking definitely good here for Rodenso. As far as some of the maybe biggest manufacturers, you've got Uniden and Valentine, which actually looked pretty similar here. Escort did seem to have kind of worse reliability compared to the other ones. Cobra seemed to be kind of down on the lower end and here as well. You can see their blue bar is also smaller, kind of like Escort's is. Moving on to laser jammers, I don't think we have enough data here to really call it one way or another. We do have the anti-laser, which is going to be kind of evenly balanced here with these three different types of user reports. We had 42 data points on this one. Escort, only 5, so I don't know what we can say about that one. The TMG is kind of in line with what I was expecting here. You can see the blue bar for no issues is lower. TPX did do a little bit better here, well, quite a bit better here. They actually had no critical issues. A simpler jammer, this one's a little bit more complex, more features and stuff, but the reliability specifically of TPX does seem to be better than the TMG. Again, only 6 data points here, 22 for the TMG, so not definitive or anything, but something to consider. And then taking a look at dash cams, again, we do have a somewhat limited data set, but it does make me wonder about this whole IATF certification. If you take a look at something like Thinkware, for example, they've got the bigger blue bar. Vantrue was the same sort of thing. Again, to be fair, only 8 or 7 data points here on this one. We do have more for VFO and for Blackview, but if you take a look at those, their blue bars don't stand out compared to the red and green ones the way that we've got for like Thinkware and Vantrue. So again, not definitive or anything, but it does kind of make me wonder if these brands specifically could be more reliable. Actually, speaking of which, I just remembered about this post from Black Box My Car on the Dashcam Talk forums, and they mentioned how Thinkware it's always been really good on the reliability front. And so that definitely makes me think that there might be something to kind of what we've been seeing so far in this initial trends in this survey. And speaking of this survey, I do think that it actually has a couple issues that I definitely wanted to touch on. Number one, it's, as I mentioned a couple times throughout the video, it is a limited data set on some of the categories and for certain brands, and so it's hard to draw some definitive conclusions without a really large sample of data, right? Additionally, a lot of the responses are going to be maybe more on like the enthusiast side, because people who would spend time maybe finding the survey, who are watching my videos, who are participating, are probably going to be a little bit more involved. Like if you're watching this, you've been watching a video about countermeasure reliability and you made it to the end of the video. Like people seeing this kind of stuff are really going to be into this. It's a lot more than just your random person on the internet, you know? And so that type of customer, that type of person may definitely prefer like one brand over another. So I think the group of people that are responding to the survey is definitely going to impact these results as well. Additionally, the way I asked the survey, nothing is bound by time. So let's say you had an issue with a particular brand or a product they made. If you had an issue 5 or 10 years ago, that could still apply because the survey was asking like, have you had any issues, with this brand? And so for that reason, if a company's maybe been around longer, they've been making countermeasures longer, it gives more time for customers to have issues at some point. And so that could affect some of the results as well. Additionally, I didn't really focus it in on like just specific models within the brand. We just focused on the brand as a whole. So it's possible maybe like certain models perform really well, other models really poorly, and that level of nuance isn't something that was covered here in my survey. I also think I could have done a better job of like confirming whether or not people have had these issues resolved. I asked them, but I know not everybody did it, so I could have been like maybe adding an extra checkbox, maybe for next time, for example, of like, what's the issue? And then also, has it been resolved? I don't know if Google Forms gives me that level of control and precision, but that is something that I would like to add in too. And on that note, by no means am I a statistician or anything, and so I'm definitely sure that there's a lot of things, maybe as far as the way I'm interpreting them or the way I'm asking the questions, that could have been done better. And so if you're maybe comfortable or experienced, please let me know. Give me your feedback as far as things that I did well, as well as things that I can improve on as well. None of this stuff is perfect. I mean, my videos, my question, none of this kind of stuff is perfect either. And so, yeah, I definitely think that there's some room for improvement. I think it was definitely a good start here for like a round one. But I by no means think that this is definitive or perfect or any of that kind of stuff. So take it with a certain grain of salt, but I just wanted to share this stuff with you guys regardless. And then one last thing that I wanted to mention is, from the perspective of like a reviewer, as somebody who wants to like test this stuff and recommend something, I really want to recommend something that you guys would enjoy, that would give you guys a good experience. Like I want you to have an awesome experience, but no matter which brand I could possibly recommend, everything to some extent is going to have some issues. So there's no way for me to recommend anything that will guarantee that everybody watching these videos will have a good experience. That's not at all exclusive to countermeasures, radar detectors, dashcams, whatever. That also applies to phones, to computers, to cars, to all this other stuff too, right? Nothing's going to give like 100% perfect experience. And so we're just kind of focused on like getting the best experience possible. Like with a radar detector, doesn't give you 100% protection, right? But it kind of helps stack the odds in your favor as opposed to not running a detector at all. Same thing with the laser jammer, same thing with the dash cam. I mean, all this kind of stuff. Same thing with choosing a thing. It's not going to be 100%, but we're looking for the most reliable, the most effective, the best sensitivity, the best performance, the best quality, the best customer service. And like looking at all of that stuff, what's going to give you the best odds at getting a good experience? So that's really the point of this stuff. I kind of take it personally sometimes when I recommend something and somebody has a bad experience. It stinks. I don't like it. So I'm always like, got to take a step back sometimes. And so, yeah, no matter what I recommend or no matter what you guys could choose to buy, there's no way to guarantee perfection. But hopefully videos like this and surveys and polls can at least add a little bit more, hopefully useful information to give us a better idea as far as the likelihood of us all having a good experience. And that really is what this all is about. And so with that said, yeah, thanks so much for watching. I would love to hear your feedback on different brands, on what was discussed in the video, on the way the survey was done, on anything you'd like to talk about. Definitely let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you're all doing great, and I'll see you in the next video.